It was a quiet Sunday morning when I heard the soft knock on my door. My grandson, Ethan, had come to stay with me for a week while my daughter and her husband were away. He was just 8 years old, bright, curious, and always polite to a fault. That morning, we were sitting at the kitchen table having breakfast. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, catching the golden strands of his hair. I was buttering toast when he looked up at me with those big, innocent eyes and asked, "Grandma, can I go to the bathroom?" The way he asked it, hesitant, almost fearful, made me pause. I smiled gently and said, "Of course, sweetheart. You don't have to ask permission for that." But instead of running off like any normal child would, he froze. His little hands clenched around his spoon, and his eyes darted toward the hallway, as if expecting someone to appear. I frowned. "Ethan? Are you okay?" He nodded quickly, but I could tell something wasn't right. His small body trembled as he whispered, I just don't want to get in trouble." A chill ran down my spine. Get in trouble? For using the bathroom? He didn't answer. He just slipped off his chair and walked quietly down the hall, shoulders hunched. The silence that followed was deafening. When he came back, I knelt beside him and gently lifted his chin. "Honey, did someone ever tell you that you need permission to do that?" His lips quivered. He didn't meet my eyes. Then, in the faintest whisper, he said, "Daddy says I have to." My breath caught in my throat. At that moment, I tried to stay calm, but my heart was pounding. Ethan's father, my daughter's husband. Marky had always seemed strict, but I'd never seen him be cruel. Still, something about Ethan's tone, the fear in his eyes, made my stomach twist. I decided not to push him right then. Instead, I spent the rest of the morning watching him. How he flinched whenever a glass clinked too loudly. How he asked, "Is it okay?" before doing anything. When I offered him milk, he whispered, "Only if I finish my chores." Chores, at 8 years old, on vacation. That evening, as I tucked him into bed, I kissed his forehead and said, "You're safe here, sweetheart. You can always tell Grandma anything, okay?" He nodded, then turned to face the wall. I could hear him sniffling softly in the dark. After he fell asleep, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the flickering light of the TV. My hands trembled around the cup of tea. I hadn't touched. Something was terribly wrong. I picked up my phone and called my daughter. She didn't answer. I tried again. Still nothing. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the house made me flinch. Every sound from Ethan's room made my chest tighten. And the next morning, when I saw the bruises on his small wrists, faint, but unmistakable, I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. The truth was coming, whether I was ready for it or not. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains, as if nothing was wrong, but I saw everything differently now. Ethan sat quietly at the table, staring at his cereal, his little fingers curling around the spoon like he was afraid to drop it. I couldn't stop looking at the faint bruises on his wrists. They were yellowish, healing, but deep enough that someone must have gripped him hard. Too hard. I took a breath and tried to keep my voice steady. "Ethan, sweetheart," I said softly, "how did you get those marks?" He froze. His spoon clinked against the bowl, and for a long moment, he didn't say a word. Finally, he whispered, "I fell." That's what they always say, isn't it? I fell. But the way his voice trembled told me otherwise. "Are you sure?" I pressed gently, "because it looks like someone—" He cut me off with wide, frightened eyes. "Please, Grandma, don't tell Daddy, please don't." My stomach turned to ice. "Sweetheart, I won't if you don't want me to." "But did Daddy do that?" He didn't answer. He just shook his head, but tears filled his eyes, betraying the truth. I reached for him, wrapping my arms around his small shoulders. He didn't pull away, but I could feel how stiff his little body was, like he'd forgotten how to relax. "It's okay," I whispered. "You're safe here. Grandma's got you." Later that day, I tried calling my daughter again. 3 times, straight to voicemail. She'd never been hard to reach before. I began to wonder if she even knew what was happening under her own roof. When Ethan went outside to play, I quietly checked his small backpack. I know it wasn't right, but something inside me screamed that I needed answers. Inside, I found 2 sets of clothes, a toothbrush and a crumpled notebook. The first few pages were full of drawings, cars, stick figures, scribbles, but on one page, in shaky handwriting, were the words, "Good boys don't make noise." My breath caught. On the next page, written smaller this time, "If I cry, I lose my toys." Tears welled in my eyes. I clutched that notebook to my chest and whispered, "Oh, baby." What did they do to you? That evening, while Ethan watched cartoons, I went to the kitchen to call the local child protection line. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely press the numbers. But before I could hit call, my phone buzzed. My daughter, finally calling back. "Mom?" she said, her voice tired. "Everything okay?" I took a breath. "No, Anna, it's not. We need to talk about Ethan." Silence. "What about him?" He's scared, honey, and he's covered in bruises." "What's going on?" There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her tone had changed. "Mom, please." "Don't start this." "Start what?" "I'm telling you what I see." She sighed. "You don't understand. Mark is strict, but he's trying to raise Ethan right. You've always thought he was too hard on him." "Anna," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes, "this isn't strict. This is abuse." Another pause. Then coldly she said, "Don't call it that. You'll just make things worse." And she hung up. I stood there, my heart pounding, my hands trembling. Worse? How could it get worse? I turned to look at Ethan sitting on the couch, his small frame illuminated by the TV light. He laughed softly at something on the screen, but the sound felt hollow. I knew then, if I didn't act, no one would. And what I found next, in the darkness of my own house, would prove that the nightmare had only just begun. That night, the house felt heavy, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Ethan had gone to bed early, clutching his old stuffed bear, the one he never let out of his sight. I sat alone on the couch, staring at the flickering TV without seeing anything. My mind wouldn't stop replaying his words, "Please don't tell Daddy." I couldn't sleep. Something deep inside me, a voice that had been whispering all day, kept growing louder. "Check on him." So around midnight, I got up and quietly walked down the hallway to Ethan's room. The soft nightlight painted the walls in a warm glow. He was asleep, his small chest rising and falling slowly. For a moment, I just stood there, brushing his hair gently off his forehead. That's when I noticed it, a dark bruise peeking out from under his pajama sleeve, bigger than the ones on his wrist. I carefully lifted the fabric just enough to see. My stomach twisted. There were finger-shaped marks on his upper arm. Deep ones. Someone had grabbed him, hard. Tears filled my eyes. I bit my lip to keep from crying out loud. I pulled the blanket over him, kissed his forehead and stepped out of the room, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I went to the kitchen, sat at the table, and stared at my phone. I wanted to call my daughter again, scream at her, demand that she see what I saw. But then I remembered her voice. Cold. Dismissive. "You'll just make things worse." No, I wasn't going to make things worse. I was going to stop them. I dialed 911. The operator's calm voice came through. 911, what's your emergency?" I swallowed hard. I need to report possible child abuse. My grandson, he's 8 years old. She asked me for details. The bruises, the fear, the things he'd said. My voice cracked as I described it all. She told me an officer and a child welfare worker would be sent immediately. I hung up and sat in silence, my heart racing. I'd done it. I'd broken the silence. About 20 minutes later, I heard a soft knock at the door. I opened it to find a police officer and a woman in plain clothes holding a folder. She introduced herself as Ms. Davis from Child Protective Services. They were kind but serious. I led them to the living room, offered what little information I could, then quietly opened Ethan's bedroom door. He stirred, rubbing his eyes. "Grandma?" I knelt beside his bed. "It's okay, sweetheart. These people are here to help you. You're safe now." Ms. Davis spoke softly, kneeling beside him. "Hi, Ethan. I'm here to make sure everything's okay. Can I talk to you for a bit?" Ethan looked at me, uncertain. I nodded, giving his hand a reassuring squeeze. He hesitated, then whispered something to her, too quietly for me to hear. Ms. Davis's eyes softened, but her expression hardened with anger. She glanced at me and said gently, "Ma'am, we'll need to take him in for a checkup tonight, just to be sure." I nodded numbly. As they led Ethan out, he looked back at me with tears in his eyes. "Will I come back, Grandma?" I hugged him tightly. "Yes, my love. You'll come back, and no one will ever hurt you again. I promise." When the door closed behind them, the silence that followed was suffocating. For the first time in my life, I felt utterly alone. But then my phone rang. My daughter's name flashed across the screen. I hesitated, then answered. Her voice was sharp, panicked.
"Mom, what did you do?"
My blood ran cold. She knew. "Anna," I whispered. "I called the police. They took Ethan. He's safe now." There was silence. Then for the first time I heard her break. "Mom, you don't understand. You don't know what he's done to us." My heart stopped. Who has done?" Her voice shook. "Mark, he's not just hurting Ethan. He's hurting me too." And before I could say another word, the line went dead, stood frozen. The phone still in my hand. My daughter's broken voice echoed in my mind. "He's hurting me too." For years, I had worried she was distant, cold, maybe even cruel for not protecting her own son. But now I realized she was a prisoner too. The room spun. I sat down before my knees gave way. How long had this been happening? How many nights had she stayed silent, hoping things would somehow change? My phone rang again, this time an unknown number. I answered, my voice barely steady. "Mrs. Carter? This is Officer Ramirez. We're calling from the station regarding your grandson, Ethan." I straightened up immediately. "Is he okay?" "Please tell me he's okay." "He's safe," the officer assured me. "But there's something we need to discuss. It's about what he told the social worker. We'd like you to come down to the precinct." My heart thudded in my chest. "I'll be there right away." I threw on a coat and drove through the night, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Every red light felt like an eternity. When I finally arrived, Officer Ramirez met me in the lobby and guided me to a small, quiet room. Ethan was sitting there with Ms. Davis, holding a cup of hot chocolate. His little eyes lit up when he saw me. "Grandma!" I rushed to him and knelt down, hugging him tightly. "I'm here, sweetheart." Ms. Davis cleared her throat softly. "Ethan has been very brave. He told us things that explain a lot." I looked between them, fear tightening my chest. "What did he say?" The officer exchanged a glance with her before speaking. "He said that when he asks to go to the bathroom, it's because his stepfather makes him ask for permission. Always. Even at night. If he doesn't, he's punished." Tears welled in my eyes. "Punished? How?" Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. "He locks me in the closet, sometimes for a long time." My breath caught. I could feel my body trembling. "Oh, God." Ms. Davis continued gently. "He also told us that his mother tries to stop it. But when she does, his stepfather hurts her too. He says she told him never to tell anyone, that it would make things worse." I closed my eyes, pressing a hand to my mouth. The pieces were falling into place. The calls that went unanswered. The cold distance, the way she'd always sounded tired and afraid. My daughter wasn't neglecting her son. She was surviving. The officer said, "We sent a unit to their house to check on your daughter. We'll know more soon." I sat beside Ethan, brushing his hair gently. "You were so brave, sweetheart. You did the right thing." He nodded slowly, tears rolling down his cheeks. "Grandma, will Mommy be okay?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "She will be, my love. We'll make sure she's safe." Just then, Officer Ramirez's radio crackled. A muffled voice came through, urgent, tense. He stepped outside to listen, and when he came back, his face had changed. "Mrs. Carter," he said quietly, "we found your daughter. She's alive, but she's in bad shape. We're taking her to the hospital now." I gasped. "Can I see her?" "Soon," he nodded. "But there's something else. Mark, her husband, he's missing." The words hit like ice. Missing. Yes, the officers arrived and he was gone. His car, his phone, everything. He disappeared about an hour ago. A chill ran down my spine. My mind went to Ethan, sitting there, frightened and small, and I suddenly felt the weight of danger still hovering over us. "Then we're not safe," I whispered. "He knows we called the police. He'll come after us." The officer placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "We're assigning protection for you and your grandson tonight. You'll stay at a safe location until we find him." That night, I lay awake in a small motel room provided by the police. Ethan curled up beside me. Every creak, every sound made me flinch. I could see the fear in his eyes, even in sleep. And all I could think was, how close had we come to losing everything? But deep down, another question haunted me even more. Why had my daughter stayed so long? And what else was she hiding? The next morning, the sun rose weakly behind gray clouds, as if even the sky hesitated to shine on what was to come. I hadn't slept all night. Ethan's small hand was still gripping my arm, his breathing soft and uneven. Every time I looked at him, my heart cracked a little more. Around 8 a.m., my phone rang. It was Officer Ramirez. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "your daughter regained consciousness. She's at St. Mary's Hospital. We'll send a car to take you there." I turned to Ethan, brushing his hair gently. "Sweetheart, we're going to see your mom. She's going to be okay." He blinked at me sleepily, then nodded. "Can I bring my dinosaur?" "Of course," I smiled weakly. Half an hour later, we arrived at the hospital. The sterile smell of disinfectant hit me the moment I walked in. Every step felt heavier. When I entered her room, I froze. My daughter, Lily, lay there, pale and bruised, tubes running from her arms. Her eyes fluttered open when she heard my voice. "Mom?" she whispered, her voice cracked and fragile. I rushed to her side, gripping her hand. "Oh, my baby. What did he do to you?" Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Mom, I should have told you. I should have left him years ago." I swallowed hard. "Why didn't you? Why suffer in silence all this time?" Her eyes darted toward Ethan, who was sitting quietly in the chair by the window, clutching his toy dinosaur. She lowered her voice. "Because he said he'd kill us if I did. He said no one would believe me. And because of what I did." I frowned, confused. "What you did? Lily, what are you talking about?" She closed her eyes, trembling. "It started years ago, after Jason died." Jason, her first husband, Ethan's father, the man she'd said died in a car accident 8 years ago. She continued, her voice shaking. "It wasn't an accident, Mom. It was Mark. He caused it. He cut the brakes. He said Jason was getting in the way, that Jason found out about his past." I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. "My God! Lily, why didn't you tell the police? He said he'd hurt me and Ethan if I ever spoke. And after Jason died, I was alone. I was pregnant, scared. And he took care of me. He made me feel like I owed him everything. But then, the abuse started, slowly, the control, the fear." Tears streamed down my face. "You lived like this for years? With that monster?" She nodded weakly. "I thought I could protect Ethan if I stayed quiet. But it only got worse. Every time I tried to leave, he'd find us. Before I could respond, the door opened, and Officer Ramirez stepped in. His face was serious. "Mrs. Carter, we have an update. We found Mark's car near the state border, but there's something you need to see." He handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photograph, grainy, taken from a security camera. It showed Mark at a gas station, and another man standing beside him. My heart skipped. The second man looked familiar, too familiar. "Is that?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "That's Jason." Officer Ramirez shook his head. "We thought that too at first. But this man is alive, and he's using Jason's old ID. We believe Mark faked Jason's death and used his identity for years, for money, assets, and control." Lily gasped, clutching her chest. No, it can't be. Jason is dead. I saw the crash, but I wasn't so sure anymore. My mind raced, connecting pieces of a puzzle that never quite fit. If Jason's body was never truly identified, if Mark had staged it all, then maybe, just maybe, Jason wasn't dead after all. The thought both terrified and electrified me. I turned to Officer Ramirez, my voice steady despite the chaos in my chest. "Find out who that man is. If there's even a chance Jason is alive, I need to know." He nodded. "We're working on it. But for now, you and your family must stay under protection. Mark is dangerous, and until we locate him, none of you are safe." That night, as I sat by Lily's bedside, I looked at my sleeping grandson. His tiny hands curled around his dinosaur, his face calm for the first time in days. And I whispered a promise into the dim light of that hospital room. "I lost my son once. I won't lose any of you again, not this time." But even as I said it, I couldn't shake the feeling that this story wasn't over. Something darker was still lurking beneath the surface, and I was about to uncover it. The next morning felt different, too quiet, too still, the kind of calm that comes before a storm. I sat in the hospital cafeteria, my hands wrapped around a lukewarm cup of coffee, staring at the photograph Officer Ramirez had shown me the night before. The man in the image, standing beside Mark, looked exactly like my late son-in-law, Jason. The same height, the same strong jawline, even the same faint scar near his left eye. But Jason had died. Or had he? My heart wouldn't let me rest. I needed answers. When Officer Ramirez arrived, I didn't waste time. "You said you're still verifying that man's identity. What have you found?" He sighed, setting a file down. "We ran a facial recognition scan. There's a 92% match with Jason Miller, your daughter's first husband. But his death certificate doesn't have a confirmed autopsy. His body was too badly burned to identify. Dental records were supposedly used, but we just found out they were filed by Mark." I froze. "You mean the man who caused the crash also handled the records?" He nodded grimly. Exactly. My stomach turned. So you're saying Jason might have survived? Or Mark made it look like he died? It's possible. And if that's true, then Jason could have been forced into something. Or maybe he's part of it. Part of it. The thought chilled me. What if Jason wasn't the victim I thought he was? What if he'd helped Mark? Where was this picture taken? I asked. Near the Florida border, he said. They were buying fuel. Cash transaction, no trace. But this was taken just a day before we found your daughter. I pressed a trembling hand to my forehead. So he's alive. And helping Mark escape? I left the hospital cafeteria feeling like the ground beneath me had cracked wide open. Everything I'd believed for 8 years, the grief, the funeral, the tears, it all might have been built on lies. When I returned to Lily's room, she was awake, staring blankly out the window. Mom, she whispered, what did the police say? I hesitated. They think Jason might be alive. Her eyes widened. What? I showed her the photo. The moment she saw it, she gasped and pressed her hand to her mouth. That's him. Oh my God, that's Jason. Tears filled her eyes. He told me he'd always protect us. And if he's alive, why hasn't he come back? Maybe he couldn't, I said softly. Or maybe he's not the man you remember. Before she could respond, Officer Ramirez reappeared. This time with a new expression, a mix of urgency and fear. Mrs. Carter, we have a problem. The safe house where you were supposed to stay tonight, it's been compromised. My blood ran cold. Compromised? How? There was a break-in an hour ago. Someone hacked into our system and got your temporary location. We have reason to believe Mark knows where you are. I glanced at Ethan, who was quietly coloring in the corner, oblivious to the danger swirling around him. My chest tightened. So we're not safe here either. The officer shook his head. We'll move you now. Another location, off-grid. No electronic records. Within the hour, we were escorted into an unmarked van. Ethan sat between me and Lily, clutching his backpack. I could see the fear returning to my daughter's eyes, that same hollow dread she must have lived with for years. As we drove through the rain-soaked streets, I looked out the window, half expecting to see headlights following us. My instincts screamed that we were being watched. Then, as we passed an intersection, I saw it, a black SUV idling at the corner. Its windows tinted, engine running. My pulse quickened. Officer, that car. It's been behind us since we left the hospital. He checked the rearview mirror and frowned. I see it. He sped up slightly, taking a sudden right turn. The SUV followed. Buckle up, he shouted. The van lurched forward, speeding through traffic. Ethan clung to my arm, crying. Grandma, what's happening? It's okay, sweetheart, I said, forcing calm into my trembling voice. Hold on tight. The SUV gained speed. My heart pounded as sirens blared in the distance. Backup, maybe. Or something worse. And then, through the rain-streaked window, I saw him. For a brief, haunting moment, the driver's face came into view. It wasn't Mark. It was Jason, alive, driving straight toward us. I gasped, unable to breathe. Lily screamed, Jason! No, it can't be. The van swerved hard to the left as the SUV accelerated, and everything went black. When I opened my eyes, the world was upside down. Literally. The van had flipped, the windshield shattered into 1,000 glittering shards. My head throbbed, and the faint smell of gasoline mixed with rain filled the air. I groaned, disoriented. Ethan? Lily? Grandma! A small voice whimpered. It was Ethan, trembling beside me. A trickle of blood on his forehead, but conscious. Relief flooded me. He was alive. I turned my head. Lily was half conscious, her seatbelt jammed, her face pale. Mom, she moaned. Outside, the storm raged. I could hear tires screeching, a car door slamming. Then footsteps, slow, deliberate. The officer beside us stirred, his radio crackling faintly. But before he could reach it, the van's back door was ripped open. And there he was, Jason, alive, breathing, and looking nothing like the gentle, smiling man I remembered from the photos. His hair was longer, streaked with gray, his face hardened by time and something darker, guilt or madness. He looked at me, then at Lily, his eyes filled with something I couldn't read. Regret? Pain? Lily, he said softly. You have to come with me. I blinked, disbelieving. Jason? You're alive? How is this possible? He didn't answer me. His gaze stayed on Lily. We don't have time. He's coming. Who? I demanded. Mark, Jason said, glancing over his shoulder. He knows where you are. He's after Ethan. Lily's eyes fluttered open wider. You're lying! You're with him! I saw you at that gas station. Jason shook his head violently. No, Lily, you don't understand. I was never with him willingly. He found me after the crash. He saved me, but only to use me. He made me work for him, made me disappear. He said if I ever tried to find you, he'd kill you and Ethan. I stared at him, my mind spinning. So he kept you alive, and you did nothing for 8 years? Jason's eyes filled with anguish. I tried, Helen, I swear I did. But he had everything. My records, my identity. I was trapped. Until now. Officer Ramirez groaned and tried to reach his weapon. But Jason raised his hands. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I came to warn you. Mark's close. He's not giving up this time. Suddenly a loud crack pierced the storm. A gunshot. The back window shattered. Ethan screamed. Jason ducked, shouting, "Get down!" He grabbed Ethan instinctively, shielding him as another bullet ripped through the side panel. Outside, a shadowy figure moved between the rain. Mark. Jason turned to me, desperation in his eyes. I can lead him away, but you have to trust me. Trust. That word hit like lightning. How could I trust a man who had been dead for 8 years? Who stood beside the monster that ruined my daughter's life? But then I looked at Ethan, trembling, terrified, his little hands clutching Jason's jacket, and I knew I had no choice. Go, I said hoarsely. Save my grandson. Jason nodded once, his jaw tightening. He scooped Ethan into his arms and crawled through the broken side door into the rain. Mom, Lily cried, trying to reach for her son. No, don't take him. But Jason was already running into the storm, bullets chasing him through the darkness. I tried to unbuckle Lily, but my hands were shaking. Officer Ramirez pulled himself upright and grabbed his radio. Unit down. We've got shots fired. Suspect armed, heading northbound. Through the shattered windshield, I saw flashing lights approaching, sirens growing louder. Lily sobbed uncontrollably. He took him. He took Ethan. I held her close, my heart splitting in two. He's not taking him to hurt him. I saw it in his eyes. He's protecting him from Mark. She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. Mom, if Jason's alive, and Mark's after him, what's really going on? I didn't have an answer. But as I stared into the storm, one thing became clear. This was no simple story of betrayal and survival. There was something much bigger at play, something that started long before Jason's death, and it was far from over. The rain hadn't stopped for hours. It lashed against the hospital, windows as if trying to erase everything that had just happened. Lily was resting under heavy sedation, her face pale and bruised. Officer Ramirez stood beside me, talking quietly into his radio. His partner had found the crashed van. But there was still no sign of Jason or Ethan. Every tick of the clock made my chest ache. I couldn't shake the image of Jason running through the storm with my grandson in his arms. Was he really protecting him, or was this another lie? When the officer hung up, I grabbed his arm. You have to find them. We will, he said, his voice low but firm. But there's something else you need to hear. First, he opened a brown folder and laid several photographs on the small table beside Lily's bed. They were old pictures. Jason, smiling in uniform. But not the uniform of a regular soldier. The patch on his arm bore a symbol I didn't recognize. He worked for a private defense contractor, Ramirez explained. Blackwell Systems. After he left the army, they recruited him for a classified project dealing with surveillance technology. Mark Johnson, your son-in-law, was his supervisor. I blinked. Mark and Jason knew each other before Lily met either of them. He nodded. Yes, according to our records, Mark introduced Jason to your daughter. They'd been partners in a series of questionable operations overseas. When Jason tried to expose financial corruption inside Blackwell, a car crash conveniently erased him from existence. My breath caught, so Mark killed him to keep him quiet. Or tried to, Ramirez said grimly. We think Jason survived and was forced to work for Mark again. This time off the books. The room spun. You mean, this whole time? Mark's been covering his crimes by controlling the people closest to him. Exactly. And we believe he wants Ethan because Jason built something before he disappeared, something worth killing for. I frowned. What could an 8-year-old possibly have to do with any of this? Ramirez looked uncomfortable. We're still digging. But it seems Jason hid encrypted data inside an old toy drone, a gift he gave Ethan when he was a toddler. We think Mark finally realized it. I felt sick. So Ethan's been carrying proof of Mark's crimes. All along? The officer nodded. Jason must have found out and ran with him to keep it safe. For a moment, everything went silent. The truth pressed on my chest like a physical weight. My daughter had lived in fear, my grandson in trauma, and the man we thought dead was fighting a war none of us even knew existed. I stood abruptly. Then we need to help them. Jason may have made mistakes, but he's still trying to save that boy. Ramirez hesitated, then handed me a small tracking device. We managed to ping Jason's phone before he disappeared again. He's heading toward an old warehouse near Clearwater. That's where Mark operated years ago. Then that's where I'm going, I said. Ma'am, no, I cut him off. He's my family. I've already lost too much. If Jason is trying to finish this, I need to be there when he does. Within an hour, I was in an unmarked police SUV with Ramirez driving through the storm. The roads were empty, the wipers barely keeping up. Every mile felt heavier than the last. As we approached Clearwater, the lights of an abandoned shipping yard appeared through the fog. Rusted cranes loomed like skeletons. Somewhere inside that maze of darkness were Jason, Ethan, and the man who had destroyed our lives. Ramirez parked behind a row of containers and handed me a bulletproof vest. Stay behind me, he said. No matter what happens, we crept through the rain-soaked lot, the sound of thunder masking our footsteps. From somewhere inside the warehouse came voices, angry, echoing. One of them was Jason's, the other was unmistakable. Mark, give me the drive, Jason. You can't win this. I'm not the one who's been running, Jason shouted back. This ends tonight. And then a child's cry, Ethan. Without thinking, I stepped forward. Mrs. Carter, Ramirez hissed, but it was too late. My heart was louder than my fear. As I pushed open the heavy door, lightning flashed, illuminating the two men standing across from each other, guns drawn, drenched in rain, and the boy caught between them. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Mark smiled coldly. Well, he said, eyes sliding toward me. Looks like the whole family finally showed up. The storm roared outside as the truth prepared to explode inside. The metallic scent of rain and gun oil filled the air. My shoes slipped slightly on the wet concrete floor as I took a step forward, heart pounding so hard I could hear it echo. Jason's arm was trembling, the gun steady, but his eyes were full of pain, not hate. Mom, he whispered, not taking his gaze off Mark. Stay back, please. Mark laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. How touching. You still call her mom after everything? Tell her the truth, Jason. Tell her what you really did for me. Jason's jaw tightened. I already did enough for you, Mark, and I'll never let you hurt them again. Ethan whimpered, clutching Jason's leg. Mark turned his gun slightly toward the boy, and I felt my breath hitch. You think you can just walk away from this? He sneered. You and your little hero act? You're the reason Lily's life was destroyed. That's not true, I shouted, voice breaking. You're the one who blackmailed him, who controlled every move he made. Mark's eyes flicked to me, cold as steel. You have no idea what we were part of. Jason built technology that could rewrite the future, and he hid it from me. Jason gritted his teeth. I hid it because it could save lives, not destroy them. Save? Mark smirked. Don't pretend you're a saint. That drone project of yours, AI-enhanced agriculture, right? The same code could identify and eliminate threats on a battlefield. You didn't build a tool for farmers. You built a weapon. My stomach twisted. I looked at Jason. Is that true? His eyes softened when he looked at me. It started as a defense project, but I changed it. I made it detect disease, not targets. I wanted to heal what people like Mark only wanted to exploit. Mark's patience finally snapped. He raised his gun higher. Enough! Give me the drive or the boy dies. Jason's voice broke. He's your godson, Mark. That's exactly why I know what he's worth, Mark hissed. That data could make us billions. Thunder exploded outside, rattling the building. Ramirez appeared suddenly from behind a stack of crates. His gun trained on Mark. Drop it! He shouted. For a split second, everything froze. Then chaos erupted. Mark fired first. The bullet hit a steel beam, sparking. Jason shoved Ethan toward me, screaming, Run! I grabbed Ethan and dove behind a crate as gunfire echoed. Jason rolled across the floor, shooting back. Ramirez shouted something, but the storm swallowed his words. When the shooting stopped, there was only the sound of rain dripping through the broken roof. My ears rang and my hands shook. I peeked around the crate. Jason was on the ground, blood on his shoulder, his gun still in hand. Mark stood a few feet away, breathing hard, pointing his weapon at him. "Always the martyr," Mark said coldly. "You never learn." Jason coughed, a weak smile spreading across his face. "Maybe not, but I learned something else. You're predictable." He lifted his hand just slightly, revealing a small remote. Mark froze. "What did you—" Before he could finish, the warehouse lights flickered, and a faint mechanical hum filled the air. From the shadows above, half a dozen small drones descended, their blue sensors glowing. Jason whispered, "Meet your creation." The drones swarmed, projecting blinding light and a high-pitched alarm that sent Mark stumbling backward. Ramirez seized the chance, lunging forward and tackling Mark to the ground. The gun skidded across the floor. I rushed to Jason, pressing my hand to his bleeding shoulder. "You're going to be okay," I said, my voice shaking. He smiled faintly. "I told you I'd protect him." Ramirez handcuffed Mark, reading him his rights as backup sirens grew louder outside. Rain poured through the roof, washing away the blood and smoke. Ethan crawled out from behind me, eyes wide. "Grandma?" I hugged him tightly, my tears mixing with the rain. "It's over, baby. It's finally over." Jason winced as paramedics rushed in. But before they lifted him onto the stretcher, he reached into his jacket and handed me a small data drive. "Keep this safe. It's not just code, it's proof of everything." I nodded, gripping it tightly. "I will." As they wheeled him out, the blue and red lights from the police cars flashed against the rain-soaked glass, painting the world in color again. Ramirez turned to me. "He's a hero, you know." I looked at the data drive, then at Ethan, and whispered, "No, he's a father." Outside, the storm finally began to fade, but deep down I knew some storms never really end. The ambulance lights flickered red against the night as we sped through the city. Jason lay pale and still, his hand cold in mine. Yet there was a quiet peace in his face I hadn't seen in years. Ethan sat beside me, his small hand clutching Jason's jacket, refusing to let go. When we reached the hospital, doctors rushed him into surgery. I stood outside the emergency room doors, numb, replaying every word, every gunshot, every tear. Ramirez arrived a few minutes later, his clothes drenched, his expression solemn. "They got Mark," he said softly. "He won't hurt anyone again. And the data, Jason's drive, will expose everything. Fraud, embezzlement, the defense contracts, everything." I nodded, but my heart was elsewhere. "Will he survive?" I asked. Ramirez hesitated. "He's strong, but he lost a lot of blood." Hours passed like years. The clock ticked, the rain eased, and the hospital hall grew silent. Finally, the doctor stepped out, his eyes tired but gentle. "He's stable for now, but he needs rest. You can see him, one at a time." I entered the dimly lit room, my steps trembling. Jason lay there, his shoulder bandaged, oxygen mask over his face. Machines beeped steadily beside him. His eyes fluttered open when he heard my voice. "Mom," he whispered. I took his hand. "You saved us," I said, tears rolling down my cheeks. "You saved your son. You saved the truth." He smiled faintly. "I just wanted to make things right." "You did," I whispered, squeezing his fingers. "You did more than right. You gave us back our peace." Ethan tiptoed in, holding a drawing in his tiny hands, a picture of the three of us, under a bright sun. He placed it beside Jason's pillow. "Daddy, I made this for you." Jason's lips trembled. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "Just like you, buddy." His breathing grew shallow, and a wave of panic gripped me. "Jason," I said, voice breaking, "don't you leave me. We still have time. We can fix this, we can—" He shook his head weakly. "You already did, Mom. You raised me to be good. Even when I failed. I'm sorry for hiding him from you. I thought I was protecting him from my mistakes." I couldn't speak. The pain was too heavy. He reached for my hand one last time. "Take care of him. Tell him I loved him enough to fight the darkness." "I will," I whispered, choking back sobs. "I promise." The heart monitor slowed. Steady, steady, then fell silent. I screamed his name. Doctors rushed in, machines whirred, but I already knew. My son, my boy, was gone. I stood frozen as they covered him with the white sheet. Ethan buried his face in my skirt, crying softly. "Grandma, Daddy's sleeping, right?" I knelt, holding him tightly. "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered, my tears falling on his hair. "He's sleeping. But he'll never stop watching over you." Days later, we buried Jason next to my husband. The same graveyard, the same quiet wind, I placed Ethan's drawing on the stone and whispered, "He'll grow up knowing who you were, not your mistakes, but your courage." Ramirez was there too. He handed me a sealed envelope. "Jason wanted you to have this." Inside was a letter, written in Jason's handwriting. "Mom, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't say it myself. I'm sorry for the lies. I wanted to spare you the pain. But I see now that truth is the only thing that heals. Tell Ethan I love him more than life itself. Tell him that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means freeing yourself from hate. Don't let my story end in sorrow. Let it be a lesson that even broken men can do one good thing before the end. Your son always." "Jason." I pressed the letter to my heart, tears flowing freely. Ethan tugged at my hand and smiled faintly. "Grandma, can we plant flowers here? Daddy liked blue ones." I smiled through the pain. "Yes, my love. Blue ones it is," as we planted them together. The morning sun broke through the clouds, painting the sky gold, the same sky Jason used to dream under. Life would never be the same, but somehow I felt lighter. The weight of secrets, guilt, and betrayal was gone. In the weeks that followed, the investigation into Mark's crimes made headlines. His empire crumbled and Jason's name was cleared. The technology he built was transferred to an organization that used it for humanitarian work. His vision finally fulfilled. Ethan started school again. He carried Jason's drawing in his backpack. And every night he'd say, "Good night, Daddy, to the stars." And as for me, I found peace not in forgetting, but in forgiving. Because sometimes healing isn't about moving on. It's about remembering with love instead of pain. This story, my story, is a reminder that even the darkest secrets can't bury the light of truth forever. And no matter how shattered a family becomes, love has the power to rebuild it, piece by fragile piece. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Next Gen Stories, where we bring real emotions, real lessons, and stories that remind us what it means to be human. Until next time, cherish your loved ones, and never underestimate the power of truth.